Well, the big news this week is definitely all the news surrounding the Microsoft Activision acquisition. So let's get right into it. And we're going to start this episode off light. We're going to start off fun because there is brand new news surrounding Starfield coming from a one-on-one sit down with Todd Howard over on Bethesda's channel. So go check that out, but we're going to be talking about that and then we'll be getting into all this Microsoft Activision stuff. And Todd talks about a lot of things in this interview, or at least a lot of things for how short the interview was. He talks about influences for Starfield. He also talks about Starfield leaning more towards hard sci-fi. He also talks about a fuel mechanic for the player's ship and that the amount of fuel that you have limits how far you can travel so that you aren't constantly running out of fuel mid-flight. He also says that there will be quests and missions in-game that you can do to remove your player's traits if you find that you don't like the traits that you've chosen at the beginning of the game. And he says that this is an alternative to having to make a brand new character whenever you want to try out new traits or maybe you don't like the traits you've chosen. And thankfully, we are finally returning to a more classic Bethesda style for dialogue interactions with NPCs. I think that's one of the main things that held back Fallout 4 was that the dialogue interaction with NPCs felt a little off compared to Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, and even the Elder Scrolls series. It was a pretty short interview, but definitely worth checking out if you're a fan of Bethesda and you're hyped for Starfield like I am, so I'll have a link to that interview in the description. And with that being said, we will be moving on to the big news, which of course is this whole Microsoft and Activision deal. And this is interesting because there's a lot of different takes coming in from multiple different sides. You've got Sony is obviously invested in this, you've got Microsoft obviously invested in this, and then on top of that you've got takes coming in from Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick, who seems to be all in favor of the acquisition. And since I just brought up Take-Two CEO, I think we'll start with his comments first, because he sat down for a little interview with The Wrap and he was asked multiple questions about this Microsoft and Activision deal. It's about a 30-minute interview on YouTube, and I'll leave a link to that in the description. You can definitely check it out if you want to, but the clip that's going around on Twitter that everyone is talking about in regards to this Microsoft and Activision deal is about 3 to 4 minutes. And in that 3 to 4 minute span where they were talking about this deal, Zelnick seemed to be very much in favor of it. I mean, for me personally, it was a little uncomfortable to watch because the interviewer just kind of kept trampling on all of his answers. She would ask him a question, he would begin to answer, she would trample on it with another question. And don't get me wrong, she was asking pretty damn good questions that got pretty good answers when he was allowed to answer, but it just kind of felt like he wasn't really allowed to answer that often. But when asked about the deal, he responded with, quote, "We're certainly of the belief that it's a good thing for Microsoft and the industry. It's a highly fragmented business and there's plenty of room for creativity to go around. And Microsoft is an ally of ours. And if this makes their business more powerful, then we think that's good for us." He was also asked if he was concerned that Activision Blizzard games would become Microsoft's core focus after the deal goes through. And he replies with, quote, "Ultimately the consumer votes, and if we create great hits, which is our business, the consumer will show up and no one can take that away from us, and no one can replicate that. At the end of the day, if Microsoft is focused on the power and strength of their own business, they're going to want to be pushing the most successful properties, and if consumers are showing up for properties and Microsoft isn't engaged, isn't involved, isn't a partner, then that would be a bad thing for Microsoft." And he wrapped it up with something that I think makes a lot of sense and is actually pretty funny. He says, "In other words, we compete with everything and we compete with nothing." But there's even more news surrounding this acquisition, and that is the fact that Microsoft has accused UK's competition regulator of, quote, "adopting Sony's complaints without appropriate level of review." And I think that one's pretty damn self-explanatory. And I also have to say, I do kind of agree with this because the UK CMA's comments on the acquisition a few months ago, I think it was back in August, maybe late August, where they were talking about how it negatively affects Sony and how they're worried that it could have a negative impact on Sony's business. And these were official documents from the UK CMA where they seemed genuinely concerned about Sony's business in regards to this Activision Microsoft deal. I mean, it read like it was written directly by Jim Ryan, which is hilarious, honestly. It's also hilarious considering the fact that it's not the UK CMA's job to protect Sony, it's their job to protect consumers. Speaking of Sony, apparently they told UK regulators that Call of Duty players are likely to switch to Xbox even if the franchise stays on PlayStation. And their reasoning for coming to this conclusion, which is just so hilarious, is the fact that they are worried that Microsoft could lock exclusive content to the Xbox platform. You know, if we're being honest, I think PlayStation might be onto something here. I mean, truthfully, I really couldn't imagine what kind of sick, disgusting, awful company would do something like that. Why would you lock players out of content on other platforms? Why wouldn't you let them enjoy the game the way the developers want them to enjoy the game? Why would you pay for exclusive content? What kind of horrible, horrible corporation would ever do that? I'll tell you what, if Microsoft goes that route, I'm gonna lose a lot of respect for them. And yes, that was all sarcasm. What in the fuck is PlayStation talking about, excuse my language? Of all companies to complain about not someone locking exclusive content behind their platform, the possibility of that happening. Of all the companies to complain about the possibility of someone locking exclusive content to their platform, God, it's hilarious that it's Sony. It is hilarious that it's Sony. And that's hilarious considering the fact that if this deal goes through, and it goes through on time, like how they speculated it would be done in June, Sony will still have marketing rights for the next 2 years after that. They'll still be getting exclusive content just like they're gonna get with Modern Warfare 2, just like they got with Vanguard, just like they got with Black Ops Cold War, just like they've got with every Call of Duty since Infinite Warfare. Do you see why that's insane? Do you see why it's hypocritical? And hey, let's just forget Call of Duty for a second. Callisto Protocol coming out in December has exclusive content on PlayStation. Hogwarts Legacy coming out next year, exclusive content on PlayStation. What about the PS4 era with Destiny 1 and 2, exclusive content on PlayStation? And Sony is apparently worried that this exclusive content could persuade gamers to choose Xbox over PlayStation. And unfortunately for them, they know that more than anybody. And it's unfortunate for them because it feels like these claims and concerns by Sony hold no weight. And it's hilarious because you know and I know for a fact that if Sony were acquiring Activision Blizzard, it wouldn't be a question about exclusive content on PlayStation or Xbox. There would be no content on Xbox. Call of Duty wouldn't be coming to Xbox. So if you're like a lot of people in the community and you love the drama, then hey, you're definitely getting a show with this whole Microsoft Activision stuff. And if you're someone who doesn't care for all the drama and news surrounding this acquisition, then I suggest turning on your favorite game, turning up some music, and drowning it all out, because the next few months are going to be filled with drama like this. And sometimes I'll be covering it here on the channel, but sometimes I get tired of it just like anyone else, and I want to take a break from it. And honestly, I think that's the healthiest way to approach this. So with all that being said, I want to say thank you for watching. If you've made it this far into the video, I really do appreciate it. I say it all the time, but I really do mean it. Leave a like if you liked the video, leave a comment down below, let me know what you're thinking about all this. And please remember to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell if you're enjoying this kind of content and want to stay up to date with it going forward. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.